Jim Bodiford is retiring. That leaves open a seat on the bench. Two women have reached a runoff in that race. Ann Harris won 41% of the vote. How do you do? Very good. And she faces Juanita Stedman. Please join me in welcoming both candidates. It's a pleasure to have you both. If you'll take a look down here right in front, this is your time cue, and you'll see, show the signs. No, don't wave, show them. There you go. Thank you. Yes, the first wave means, so you see what the time cues are. We'll be pretty strict about trying to adhere to those. And with that, each of you will have 1 minute now to introduce yourselves. Ms. Stedman, yours is first.
Thank you. I am Judge Juanita Stedman. 14 years ago, almost 14 years ago, I had the privilege of being appointed to be a juvenile court judge. I've served in that capacity, I believe, with dignity and with honor and with integrity. In that capacity for 3.5 years is what it would equal. I have been a Superior Court judge, and I've had the opportunity to hear the Superior Court cases 1 week each month that I have served as a juvenile court judge. I believe that you will know when you leave tonight and after us that I am the one with the most experience. I am the one with the experience that really does matter and really does count. And that's the experience of being a judge, of being someone who, when I start this job, the very first day, I will have the skill set to do whatever comes in front of me. It is great to see all of you here. It's amazing to be in a room, especially with such low turnout, to have all of these folks here who are interested. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Harris.
I'm Senior Assistant District Attorney Ann Harris, and I'm a candidate for Superior Court Judge. I find it a privilege to be here in front of you tonight. I spent about 7 years in the business world and then went back to law school. And when I finished at Vanderbilt, I came back here and I went into, I didn't choose the private sector, I chose public service because I wanted to do good, not do well. And for the last 19 years, I have prosecuted in Superior Court, not just here and there, but every day, every week, every year. I've prosecuted the murderers and the rapists and the armed robbers. I prosecuted the first case of felony elder abuse, and I was instrumental in drafting the first anti-human trafficking law here in the state of Georgia. For these reasons, the Fraternal Order of Police and our District Attorney Vic Reynolds has chosen to endorse me. I have worked to deal fairly with everyone. I have worked to know the law and follow the law in every case, and my record bears that out. I believe I have the experience that matters, and I ask for your vote on July 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'll start with some questions. Would you please just give me a one-word answer each? Ms. Stedman, you first. Do you believe yourself to be tough on crime? One word.
Okay, one word is yes, but I'm going to add a sentence there because other people do that and other things. If I weren't, I wouldn't have been a judge in Cobb County for almost 14 years.
Ms. Harris, tough on crime? Are you tough on crime?
Yes.
Thank you. I asked that question, and I don't mean to be too dramatic here, but I wanted to ask you, in the context of those statements, believing you both to be tough on crime, I want to know what you as a judge will do to make sure, A, that the state follows the law, and B, that you protect the rights of the accused. And we'll begin with Ms. Harris. Please.
What you should know as a prosecutor is that my job is to seek justice. My job is not to notch convictions, it is to seek justice. For that reason, I can tell you, and you can ask most defense attorneys here in this county, I will take the initiative and dismiss a case if I find out there's been a Fourth Amendment violation. I don't wait for the defense attorney to come and say, hey, you got a problem with your case. Those kinds of things are important in respecting the rights of the accused. To be tough on crime, you have to be just. You have to seek the result that does justice for the victims, but also does justice for the defendants. So you respect the rights of the accused, but you also seek justice for your victims. But it's not about notching convictions, and because I have that background as a prosecutor, I will take that fairness and that integrity with me to the bench.
Ms. Stedman.
Well, I have the record you can look at. For 13 years, almost 14 years, I've done that. I've been that scales of justice. I've been the one who's had to look and make sure that people were doing the right thing and following the law. I've also been the one who's had to make sure that the rights of the victims were protected. I've been the one who's had to make sure that as a judge, we did the right thing. That is what a judge does. You don't prosecute, you don't defend, you sit up there and you make those tough decisions when people are prosecuting in front of you and people are defending folks in front of you. That's also true in your civil cases. When you're talking about cases that come in juvenile court, same standard of proof, same thing that has to be done and has to be looked at. I have that 13-year record of showing you that I have done that. Thank you.
Thank you both. Your position as an elected official and as an arbiter of the law puts you in an unusual position. Please describe what you as a judge would do if elected that you perceive your opponent cannot or will not do as well. Ms. Stedman.
Well, I think what my opponent, who I respect as a prosecutor, as I respect as an assistant district attorney, what she will not do as well as me is 72% of the cases that come in front of a Superior Court judge. 28% of the cases are criminal, 72% are domestic. That's adoptions, that's custody, that's modification. They may be civil cases that involve real property, civil cases that involve issues between two companies. I'm doing that, and I've done it for 3.5 years. So what do I think she won't do? I think she won't have that experience. She won't come to the table with that experience. She won't come to the table with that understanding. Thank you.
Ms. Harris.
As a practicing lawyer for 19 years, my experience has been to go into court and to know the law and to follow the law. It's also been to ask people just like you, sitting on a jury, to hold people accountable. I have asked to hold people accountable, and I have asked juries to hold people accountable. That's very different because you need a judge who is not afraid, when appropriate, to hold people accountable. And sometimes that means second chances, but sometimes that means dropping the hammer. And that is the kind of thing that I have been doing for 19 years. I also think that you want a judge that is always learning, just like prosecutors are always learning, because the fact is the law is always changing. And you can ask Ms. Stedman about that, because in 23 reported cases, she has had, I believe, count them, 4 reversals. That's a pretty high reversal rate for a judge. I, on the other hand, have not had a jury trial reversed in 19 years.
A lot of people have become concerned about the growing number of non-violent offenders who are clogging up our prison system. These are often drug offenders. What is your plan to deal with these non-violent offenders, and how will that plan affect change in our overcrowded and often underfunded prison system? Ms. Harris.
Actually, Cobb County is already doing some very progressive things in that vein. I'll just talk about 2 or 3 of them because they are actually initiated in the district attorney's office. We have a drug treatment court that Judge Krieger started several years ago. It's very intensive, it's long-term, but if you stick with it, it's very successful. We've had almost 60% of the people make it through that program, and when they have made it through that program in the 5 years following, there's a repeat felony rate of only 13%. You'd like it to be 0, but trust me, 13% is a lot lower than what you normally get. And of those people in drug court, the estimate is that 60% of them would have been in prison had they not been in drug court. So right there, we found a program that is working. We have a mental health court where we're trying to do the same thing, because people with mental illness, they need treatment. They don't need prison. We are just starting a veterans court to do the same thing. So we are already making strides in that direction to try to deal with our nonviolent offenders.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Stedman.
Ms. Harris says we. She doesn't say I started a family dependency treatment court for drug-addicted mothers and drug-addicted fathers. We have a 94% success rate. The success rate is measured by, do they go back to prison, or do they lose their children again to the state? We have a 94% success rate. I serve on the governor's committee that actually doles out $13 million to the state drug courts throughout the state. I was selected to do that by the governor. I was chosen as a hero, the judge in the state of Georgia, who's the judge that the other judges consider to be their hero, the other treatment court judges. I have presided over that drug court, that adult drug court. I also was the person who headed the committee that wrote the standards both for the family drug court in the state of Georgia, wrote the standards for the court, that the juvenile drug court, and also has approved as a committee member the standards for every kind of drug court, and I'm getting ready to have that button pushed on me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Devon. Lawyers traditionally contribute most of the money spent in judicial campaigns, and that would seem at odds when the candidate for judge who campaigns is a strict law and order candidate. Lawyers aside, what is it that you offer the common citizens of Cobb County? Ms. Devon.
Well, first off, you look at my disclosure, and a new one is out. I have had over 600 individuals or businesses to contribute to my campaign, and they are not all lawyers. But the common folk is what I deal with every day. The common folk are the families that their child is a drug-addicted mother. They have custody of those children, and I have to make those decisions to help that person and that family be put back together. The common folk are the people who come into your courtroom every day. Even though juvenile courts are closed, I open my court wide open. I have schools that come in. I just did a program for Mount Perrin 5th graders. I do programs for all kinds of schools and all kinds of citizens. Leadership Cobb has observed my court for the past 5 years. Leadership Georgia chose my court to observe, my family treatment court to observe recently. So those are the common folk. We're all common folk, and I think that's probably what you do the most, is you remember that there by the grace of God goes you, and you too are a common folk.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
You know, it's a shame that it takes so much money to run for office, because I think that keeps a lot of good people out of our political system. I will tell you, I'm blessed enough, my husband might say cursed, I'm blessed enough to have a husband who was able to help me pay for a lot of my campaign. The majority of it has been self-financed. So what does that mean to the common folks? It means I'm not beholden to anybody. I will rule without being a respecter of persons, just like I have been a prosecutor without being a respecter of persons. During this campaign, when I'm not at work, in the courtroom, in Superior Court, I have been out there, not with lawyers, but with business people, with small business owners, with folks in civic groups, with people just like you. Because Superior Court, at the end of the day, really is the people's court. And so, as a judge, I think it's important to be out in the community hearing what's on your mind. It's that fairness, it's that openness, and it's that knowledge and familiarity with folks just like you that I will take to Superior Court as a judge.
Thank you. Ladies, I have one last question, and then what we'll do is we'll have each of you ask questions of the other. My last question for you at the moment is, there is a great hue and cry about the state of Georgia's child protection capabilities, specifically the Division of Family and Children Services. What are you willing to do to protect children in the course of your duties as a Superior Court judge? We'll begin with Ms. Harris.
Well, I think on the domestic side, one of the things that you do is you keep in mind when there are custody matters, it's the best interest of the child. Reuniting families is a fine and worthy goal, and that's a fine goal in juvenile court in a lot of those cases, but at the end of the day, it's the safety of the child. It's what's in the child's best interest, and I think if y'all been reading the paper, you know that sometimes our system seems to have lost sight of that. So I think that's something that needs to be kept in mind on the domestic side. On the criminal side, well, it's not easy, but it's a little bit obvious. You take domestic violence seriously because if you don't know, I'll tell you, children that are exposed to domestic violence, they grow up to be either victims or offenders. So we have to continue to take domestic violence seriously. I've done that as a prosecutor. I will do that as a judge. There are no guarantees, but those are the things that you can do.
Thank you. Ms. Stedman.
I'm glad that question's been asked, because if you've been reading the paper, it's all over the paper. The governor recently made huge changes. Ms. Harris's answer didn't answer that question. We're talking about the Department of Family and Children's Services. Governor Deal did gutsy things in the last couple of weeks. He's making the director of the Department of Family and Children's Services go and report directly to the governor. The other thing he's done that's gutsy and great for that organization is he has appointed Bobby Cagle. And if anybody in this courtroom knows him, he's a man who can make changes. Bobby Cagle has said, we will no longer be a department about putting children back in the homes, which was the way that department used to run. We are now going to be a department that's going to make the right decision, even if that means that more children are in de facto custody. As a Superior Court judge, what you can do is appoint a good juvenile court judge, and they've done that with me for the last 4 years, and I have held de facto accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, candidates, you'll now have a chance to question each other. And once again, I remind you, our time is strictly limited and it will be strictly enforced. You have 30 seconds in which to pose your question. You have 1 minute to answer. The questioner will then be afforded 15 seconds to rebut. Ms. Stedman, we'll begin with you.
Thank you. And you have run on having experience in criminal law, and you certainly do. Tell us how many cases you've tried in domestic as an attorney. How many cases have you tried as an attorney in any civil area? How many of those cases have you presided over as a judge, whether they be domestic, custody, or they be property cases? Or civil cases, sorry.
Well, I don't think I've ever maintained in this campaign that I've done any of those cases. I'm not going to stand here and make anything up. I haven't presided over the criminal cases or anything else. I think what you need to understand, though, is when you're in court, it's the practicing lawyers that have to know the rules of evidence, the rules of procedure, because they are the ones that invoke a ruling from the court. So it's the practicing lawyer, it's the prosecutor, it's the defense attorney, it's that experience for 19 years that is where you learn, because it's the lawyer that's standing there saying, object and here's why, or don't admit and here's why. So it's that kind of knowledge that you need in a judge. And when you have a judge that does not have that kind of experience, then you get mistakes on the bench. As far as presiding, as far as trying a domestic case, certainly I haven't done that. I've made no pretense of doing that. I'm not going to pretend otherwise.
15 seconds to rebut.
Well, the rebuttal is this. Ms. Harris forgets I was a practicing attorney. I practiced law. I didn't just become a judge. I had to practice law. You have to practice law for 7 years before anybody can appoint you. So I was a practicing attorney. I have practiced those cases, and I have tried those cases. I have certainly had DAs who've asked me to rule on things that I've had to overrule. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Harris, would you like to ask a question of Ms. Stedman?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Stedman, you've run on a platform that you don't need on-the-job training, but a review of your record on appeal reflects that of some 23 reported cases, 5 were reversed, either in whole or in part, for judicial error, where you sat as judge and jury and they were reversed because, for example, you relied on hearsay, you mischaracterized and misstated the evidence. In another case, parental rights were terminated based on no evidence as to one of the factors. Just a week and a half ago, you were reversed in a civil case where you used a contempt order in an unauthorized manner to modify the terms of a divorce. So my question is, your track record on appeal with this kind of reversal rate of close to 20% in both juvenile and superior court, how can voters expect that if you're elected, you will get it right?
Well, first of all, it's not 20%. If you think I've only tried 23 cases in the last 13 years, I hope everybody in this room is smart enough to know I haven't. I think it's a compliment to my judgeship that people have only appealed them. And I've only been reversed 4 times. Those cases don't always go up. I try cases every day. Every day I try cases. The case that's just been reversed, if any of you are lawyers out there, you know it's been reversed by the Court of Appeals. I expect the Supreme Court to reverse the Court of Appeals, which they are doing a lot of these days. So that case is not finished. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Stedman, your question for Ms. Harris.
Ms. Harris, you've been quoted to say that One of the reasons it's okay, we shouldn't be worried, or the public shouldn't be worried that you have little experience with 72%, is because the senior judges try those cases in Superior Court. Where did you get that information? What is the statistic? How many cases of each judge is tried by a senior judge in those areas?
I'd like to interrupt for a moment. I owe Ms. Harris an apology. She had 15 seconds to rebut the previous question. I'm so sorry. Would you like that 15 seconds, ma'am?
Oh, sure.
I'm shocked.
She was polite not to jump up and knock me down, so.
The statistics regarding Ms. Stedman's reversals came from a LexisNexis search of her name as a judge, and you get 23 cases. I'm not saying that's all she's tried, but of the cases that have been appealed, the result stands.
Thank you very much, and my apologies again. Ma'am, would you like to restate your question?
Do you need for me to restate it? Yes?
I'm asking you to, if you would,
Okay,
please.
sorry, I didn't read, I apologize,
No, no.
thank you. You have stated both in a forum, when we were at the GOP, the Republican Women Forum, and also in the press, that it's not so important that you don't have experience with 72% because the senior judges try those. Now, I've actually talked to the 10 sitting judges in Cobb County, and they're upset by that statement because they say that's not true. Where did you get your statistics, and what are those statistics?
I got my statistics the same place you got your statistics from. What the statistics reveal, it is not that the senior judges try those cases, is that they handle a number of those cases. They do not try them. For example, uncontested divorces. Those are handled by the senior judges. That's about 12% of the domestic caseload. Name changes, believe it or not. There are cases to change your name. That's actually about 3% of the caseload. God forbid we have that many name changes in Cobb County. Those are handled by the senior judges. There is also the child support recovery actions in which the state is an intervener. Those are handled by the Superior Court judges. Those are not trials, but that is still a significant part of the civil case, of the domestic caseload, that's handled by the senior judges. So if I was interpreted as saying trial, no, of course not, but that is still a significant portion that is handled by the senior judges.
15 seconds, Ms. Stedman.
There is one senior judge who sits every week that helps the 10 Superior Court judges. One senior judge, they hear on domestic cases. I don't think it's 12%, it might be. I assure you that the other 38% is way more than 38% of the work. But remember that, there's one senior judge who sits for 10 judges every week. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harris, do you have another question for Ms. Stedman?
Ms. Stedman, with your experience primarily as a juvenile court judge, where the goal is to send the offender back home, where the goal is to keep the offender in the community, and then the goal is public safety. And in your 4 years prior to being a juvenile court judge, you were an advocate for the juvenile offenders in Cobb County Juvenile Court. And the fact that you have never prosecuted a criminal case. My question is, how can the voters, or can you understand how the voters would have difficulty squaring your stance that you are tough on crime when your work history indicates that you have been in a system either advocating for the juvenile offenders, or you've been working in a system where the focus is not on public safety but on reunification?
Oh my gosh, if you think gang members are not public safety issues and they are in juvenile court, then we're all in big trouble. Also, the DA's office has recently, in the last year, sent 3 murder defendants down to juvenile court. It is not to put them back in the community. They send aggravated child molesters back to juvenile court. It is not to put them back in the community. Do we do that? Yes. Do we do that in Superior Court? Sometimes you do. And the hope as a juvenile court judge is that you are tough. If you want to ask any of those juveniles who come in front of me if I'm tough, ask them. I'm tough. They don't like me. My deputies say, coming down the hall, if it's Stedman, don't take me in there because I'll never go home. So that's the reputation that I have.
15 seconds, Ms. Harris.
The effectiveness of the juvenile court system sadly can be reflected in a nickname we have for 17-year-old offenders in the DA's office who go out with guns, having already been through the juvenile system. We call them the future felons of America.
Ladies, I have been so interested in your questions and answers that I may have lost track. Have we bounced evenly here?
I think so.
Okay.
I think you've been fair.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is very fascinating to me. I never really get to hear much about judicial races, and this is very nice. I will give you now each 2 minutes to wrap up your arguments, and we will begin now with Ms. Harris.
You know, this race is about electing a judge who has the experience that matters. Superior Court judges handle some civil, they handle domestic, and they handle the criminal cases. And when you pick up a newspaper at night, or when you turn on the television and you watch the news and you hear about what's going on in Cobb Superior Court, 9 times out of 10, what you're hearing about is what a prosecutor or jurors just like you or a judge has done to hold offenders accountable. That's what I've been doing every day for 19 years. I've been holding offenders accountable. I've been working to seek and secure justice, but I've been holding offenders accountable. That doesn't mean that everyone goes to prison, because there are offenders that need compassion from the criminal justice system, and I do recommend that. I've recommended that many times, but the bottom line is you need a judge who, without flinching and without failure, will be willing to hold people accountable. And when you've been doing it for 19 years as a prosecutor, that's not a difficult transition. I'm very proud of my record on appeal. In 19 years of trying serious felonies, I've not had a jury trial reverse, and that's important because reversals are so costly to people and they're costly in economic terms. This race is about who has the experience that matters to secure justice, to work for your public safety. Because public safety, it begins with the cops, but it ends in the courtroom. And if you don't have strength, and if you don't have experience at both ends, we're going to have a problem. I submit to you that I have the experience that matters, and I have the values you trust to serve as your next Superior Court judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stedman.
Thank you. First of all, the prosecutor doesn't get reversed. Who gets reversed is the judge. The person who is up there having to make the decision about what evidence comes in, whether it's from the prosecutor or what evidence comes in, whether it's from the defense attorney. I've had the privilege of doing that for almost 14 years. I've had the privilege of working in Cobb County, Georgia as a judge, and again, my reputation is a reputation of being one with integrity, with honesty, a hard-working judge who's worked in the community. I have community members who are supporting me that you all know and respect. I have Sheriff Neil Warren, who's endorsed me. I have former Sheriff Bill Hudson, who has endorsed me. I have Court Clerk Rebecca Keaton, who has endorsed me. I have Congressman Phil Gingrich, who has endorsed me. I have Mayor Tommy Oligood, who has endorsed me. I have Mayor Thunder Tumplin, who has endorsed me. I have Mayor Joe Jerkins, who has endorsed me. Those are folks who are conservatives, who've lived in this county, who expect people to be tough on crime, expect people to be judges who are fair, expect people to be judges who give back to the community, which I have a record of doing. You can go to my Facebook, you can go to my website, you will hear those people talk about that. But what you will also see is what I've done to make good, wonderful Cobb County a better place. And I believe a judge has a responsibility to do that when they're holding up the justice system. So I am pleased to be here. Again, I think you might be 10 of the 15% that voted in the last race, so I appreciate all of y'all being here. And I'll tell you something that a good friend of mine said. Make sure you go all the way down that ballot. Do not let 10% of the people make a decision about a judgeship. That's important, and we hope tonight, I think Ann and I both do, that you'll vote and you'll realize the importance. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, your candidates for Cobb